Alrighty, let's get started. So there are 5 points today we're going to talk about that I think stand up against the Dewey Decimal System when it comes to its use in school libraries. Now, as you can tell by my little comic, Dewey would be shocked that we're even debating the success of his 100-plus-year-old system, even since his system was launched in an era where there was no universal cataloging or organization of library materials. But I think times have changed a lot, particularly in school libraries, and so I think it is worth noting the chinks in the Dewey Decimal System's armor. And we're going to do this through 5 key points. Each slide is going to discuss 1 point at a time. Starting with the first point. Libraries are primarily designed to save the time of the reader. Now, one of my colleagues actually made an awesome video. Actually, both of my colleagues made 2 awesome videos, but one in particular used her own children as test subjects with the Dewey Decimal versus genreified system. And in one example, it took her eldest son 8 seconds to find a book about sports under the genreification system. In comparison, it took him 26 seconds to find a similar book about sports in a Dewey Decimal classification environment. Now, students today are hard-pressed for time. They are hard-pressed for attention, and there are a lot of the things competing for their precious reserves of energy and focus. We cannot be setting up school libraries where it takes a very long time for students to find a basic level idea of a book. Dewey Decimal doesn't help us with that. Genreification does a much better job at ensuring that patrons get to their materials faster. This brings you to my second point, particularly when it talks about young school library patrons and their time. Decimals are not adequately taught or taught at all until the second half of 4th grade. This is a huge disservice to our younger patrons to organize a library in a way that they haven't been taught yet. They don't know anything about decimals. And given that we already have a learning gap thanks to COVID, we're already making it that much more difficult for our learners to even access our materials. This brings me to my third point. Because it's so difficult to find things under the Dewey Decimal System, it takes them so much time, it uses a method they haven't been taught with, they would rather use Google rather than our digital resources. That's not acceptable. Digital literacy and digital media skills are needed now more than ever before. And that need is increasing with the release of things like AI into the internet and into the wild. Students need skills to be able to cope with the streams of information they receive on the daily in these environments. And the best place for them to learn these digital literacy and information science skills are in our libraries. And if they are not comfortable going into the library because everything is cataloged in a way that's arcane to them, they're not going to come to us for help. And that's not okay. We need a new system. My fourth point about the Dewey Decimal System as a harm, as it were, is that alternatives exist, and they've proven to work really, really well. The Red Hawk Elementary example that we've all read about did data tracking as to the success of its overall approach by completely throwing out the Dewey Decimal System. And it found that out of all the books their 5th graders checked out, 61% were nonfiction. In contrast to the 2 other schools in the district which did use the Dewey Decimal System, their 5th graders only checked out 39% and 46% of their total circulation being nonfiction books. Now, anyone who's ever worked in a school library knows that it's very difficult to get students to read nonfiction books. They really like fiction. They really like graphic novels. And so getting them interested in nonfiction stuff is hard. So the fact that they were that invested in the nonfiction section because the Dewey Decimal System was gone, that just proves that there are alternatives out there, and they work really, really, really well. So, to sum it all up with my 5th point, genreification is the best alternative we currently have for young students. It saves our time to do a myriad of other things because students as young as kindergarten can focus on and find books that interest them without our help. That's something the Dewey Decimal System does not allow them to do. Now, Dewey Decimal is great for adults, but it's not good for a generation that's media saturated, that's content saturated, that's pressed for time, and that is still trying to make up for lost ground that was caused by the pandemic. So I think it's fair to say it's time for a change. These are some major, I think these are the 5 strongest points against the Dewey Decimal System. And I look forward to hearing your rebuttals. Thank you.